What's up everyone, this is Cher talking, welcome back to my channel, and in today's video we're gonna talk about the Romancing Festival Therese banner that brings a rerun of 5 different styles. Summer Therese, she's a Global X style, another Global X is Lyza, then we have Robingirl, the last version of Rouge, and Arsenal. One good thing about this banner is that all 5 units still have some applications inside the game, although some of them may not be as good as some recent releases. But we have 5 units, that means that every time you summon you're gonna get at least one of them. That increases the value of the gens spent. We're gonna start talking about Therese. She's a Global X style, still strong. Her dexterity may not seem that high, but her status distribution actually works well. Right now we have some characters with 116, she has 106, that's not that far. Her agility and will are also prime. She has very high agility, very good will. Usually when fighting against bosses that uses mage attacks, they are sometimes weak to pierce attacks, so that makes sense to bring Therese. High will also protects you against debuffs and status ailments. Her endurance is not that high, but it doesn't matter. Her intelligence does not matter too. Love and charisma actually matters because she self-heals, but the status here are actually pretty good. She also recovers BP and HP when attacking. That is actually good because one of her attacks, it's double and it will trigger 2 times. The second passive gives her 15% buff to dexterity, but also gives her a defense boost that decreases damage by 30%. This is actually better than High Protect Tension, for example, because you are always getting dexterity buffs and they will increase damage much more than just 20% increase in damage. And she also has access to Fire Depth 6, that means that she only has 30% passes, but by stacking dexterity her damage is actually okay. The first skill, Solar Arrow, a single target attack with double elements that buff the dexterity by 25% when on max level. This is good to stack dexterity, and since she gets essentially at least 4 BP per turn, she is also saving to use one of her nukes. Her nuke attacks called Double Phoenix Arrow, a 9 BP attack that hits twice with S power, pierce and heat damage. This is actually very strong. It's kind of like Final Emperor Double Dark Blade that has the same mechanic, but in Emperor's case he only deals slash damage and spends 12 BP. In Therese's case, she only uses 9, but takes 2 different effects. At first, she loses 30% of her base dexterity as a penalty, but she also recovers HP by around 1000. That is actually very nice. And she will trigger her Breath of Invigoration 2 times when using this skill. So, she gets 5 BP on this turn, heals herself for 1k, but then heals again 2 times because of Breath of Invigoration, so probably 1.3k when she uses this attack, and she recovers 5 EP, allowing her to use this attack again in a short period of time. And the 30% dexterity buff is not that big because it counts this turn that you use this skill, so you only have 3 turns where this applies on Therese, and starting by turn 2, it's only minus 22.5, and you get that back just by using Solar Arrow Plus, that on max level will buff your dexterity by 25%. So it's actually a very nice thing. Some characters that nuke in the game will have to get paralyzed by being able to nuke much more than other characters, but in her case, she is actually self-fixed by her own design. Then she has Rapid Fire. This is a row attack with both Pierce and Heat, and buffs her dexterity both times that she attacks. So, very nice because she buffs her dexterity, heals 2 times and gets BP 2 times again. She can cycle pretty well, these skills, but she cycles between single target and then row. I do believe that she works better for single target, but you can also use her for row if you have another character when going for, 3 wave setups, because on single wave setups she cannot use Rapid Fire 2 times in a row, so that is not a perfect build. She does not rely on the past style for inheritance. All she needs is here, and she can be used on boss fights easily if you don't have Darky or Chooser. Darky and Chooser are still better overall, but Therese beats the Global X Darky, but does not beat Bloody Darky that can buff dexterity 3 times, and he also buffs will. And in fights against enemies that use magical attacks, he just beats Therese. But Therese works well in Remembrance Battle, and I know many people still haven't beat the bow version and we'll get more boss fights for Remembrance in the future. So Therese is pretty solid as a damage dealer, will not beat Chooser, will not beat Darky with a perfect build, but it's just there as a very good utility character that hits for double elements all the time. She is an SS plus style in our tier list. Now we shall talk about Lyza, another Global X style that does not rely on inheritance. That's actually pretty nice. In her banner, she was the best character and she's still very useful. We have a focus on STR and agility. They are not that far from recent releases. Her endurance and will are the same, and she also has defensive passive. She does not take much damage. She does not use anything else, although intelligence can be used by inheritance, it doesn't really matter. For passives, Lyza has ready to go. She decreases damage by 25% on all times, and on even turns, that is 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, she gets 10% increase in her damage, and is permanent in battle. And the second one is just the same as Therese, she recovers HP and BP when she attacks, so very nice to become sustainable, and fired up 6 increases her damage by 30%. So on the max we have 80%, but that takes 9 turns, and she recovers BP and HP when attacking. Then we have this skill called On Your Mark, and it's actually very nice. She uses 2 LP and 4 BP to get another hit up, so we get here 90%, and a defense up that decreases damage by 10%. So we can use this 2 times, reaching as much as possible of 90% hit up, 20% damage reduction, then -10 and a -10 again. She is actually very sustainable for boss fights because of this. You don't really need to use On Your Mark, sometimes you won't even think about it because you want to use her as a buffer, and she's actually a very nice one because of Wave Rush. Wave Rush is an attack with 3 hits. It opens with full AoE and blunt and cold, and then uses 2 cold attacks that only do cold damage. She's a primarily cold attacker and not exactly blunt. The good thing is that when she's using this attack, she will buff all surviving allies' agility by up to 25% on max level. She is an essential character to be used in full evasion squads, especially when a boss uses the 5 weaknesses. So you cannot be buff your boss, but you can buff your own agility in order to try to evade. This type of strategies are not as common, but new players can simply go for many tower events and also attacks events with a full evasion squad, and it will work most of the time. The better characters are Lyza and then Matriarch. Of course, Matriarch with inheritance of being off. The victory that comes from her first style, that buffs agility and other status. And another one is actually ScherBR. ScherBR has an attack with 7 BP cost, and he himself gets 4 BP per turn, so Wave Thrust, that's a very good skill. Kind of similar to how Lyza performs. When she uses Wave Rush, she will recover 3 extra BP. So essentially she only uses 7, and that's actually very nice. You can cycle between Wave Rush and normal attacks, or Wave Rush and ride the waves. This is a roll attack with only 1 BP cost that also buffs her own agility, but only herself this time by 25. So she can keep cycling full agility buffs to become fully evasive. Some people even using her on the Desert Lens X formation to be in a full evasion tank, but this doesn't work all the time. But she is a character that has something to be desired. She will be very strong for the Remembrance battles, and can be used in full evasion setups even though they are not as popular as they were. New players take more advantage of Lyza, while veterans may be leaving the full evasion squads by this point, while Lyza still offers because she can use it both in farming and when trying to full evade some very hard challenges, because they still exist. Lyza, because of the agility buffs and self-sustain, is a triple S character in our tier list, will be updated in the future, but eventually she will be dropped to SS+. Now we have to talk about Robingirl, and she is actually very different when compared to her JP counterpart because of global buffs, kinda of a new character altogether. And I have to say, I'm sorry, I didn't give her enough credit on her release. She had very good utility on Remembrance, and also some events where she could tank and even solo. I said that her utility would decrease over time. In that part I was right, because she lacked very strong attacks, but she still has some unique design, and if you are having some problems with a Remembrance battle, Robingirl can help you a lot. Her status are not that bad. Well, she has a focus on dexterity and intelligence, although she does not use spells, she's a debuffer. Her will is good enough, and her endurance kinda suffers a lot, but she does have a defense reduction passive, so it's not that bad. Her agility is not that high, but it's not a problem too. So a focus on dexterity, agility, intelligence, and will without losing too much, not that bad. Her first passive is Explosive Punishment, and when attacked, she will buff her own dexterity by 20%, even if she evades. All attacks that hits her will buff her dexterity, so she becomes stronger. She will also nullify all cold attacks. That's kind of like Robin Polka. He has the same thing, but instead he buffs STR and negates fire. And she will counterattack with Robin Bomb, that it's a full AoE attack with blunt and heat, deep power only, but has a chance to confuse the target. So nice, because in the future we may take advantage when there's too many enemies that can be inflicted with confusion, but it's still pretty rare, mostly on tower. Then after that, she has Breath of Invigoration, the same passive as the other ones, recovers HP and BP when attacking. And High Protect Tension that increases damage by 20%, reduces damage taken by 30%, so pretty nice. She will receive less damage even from physical, so not that bad. And this is the part where I failed to recognize the character. On release, I thought that she would not survive too much because of this endurance and High Protect Tension, but the Zerglance Axe proved it to be enough to make her survive, and she heals when she counters as well. So depending on enemy behavior, if it uses multi-hits and not full nukes, and you can counter many times, you are also buffing and healing, so good enough for some situations where she could solo. The first skill is Ice Arrows, a very weak attack that can debuff agility by 15% on max value and hits for piercing cold. So this is good, not that cheap with 4 BP, but she gets 4 every turn, so that's not bad. But the opener is Dragon's Frenzy, and she keeps the agility debuff but adds a stun chance. It's slow, but it can happen because her intelligence is 100%, same piercing code. So you open with the strong attack and then uses the weak one, and you get PP by countering, then you can use the strong attack again. But it's not that strong, it's only deep power. This was something that I criticized on her review. She also has Assassin Zero, an 8 power attack with 6 BP that can instant kill. Although using this for instant kill is pretty rare since it's single target, and even on Conquest you don't find stages that you can instant kill 2 times with ease. At least this one is fast, right? And if you want to use her on the Zerglance Axe formation to receive the damage reduction, she needs to attack first, and the newest formation that we just got is also the same. You have to attack first to reduce damage. So it kind of works, but the damage is pretty low. Even when she solos, she barely does damage, even when she buffs, but eventually she can kill the targets, and if you have difficulty on that Remembrance battle, she was made for that. And you can inherit a heal from one of her past styles. She has this droplet from this style here, and also from this summer version we have Water of Life, so she can be used for that. But besides, it's more about newcomers getting some utility from a character that can solo some old content, but I believe that veterans now may have more utility for the future. Looking on future styles will be better, but she still helps a lot on Remembrance battles, and she is a standard double S in our tier list. Next, Rouge, and this one was released alongside Leon's banner. Many people will have him, I believe, and he is actually good, but we got replacements for him that are better most of the time. He doesn't have a good endurance, actually pretty bad. He has a focus instead on agility, intelligence, and will. His intelligence is good enough, agility not as much, could have been better, and love and charisma are just average, but he has goodwill like all mages. Still keeping the same passive Breath of Invigoration, they keep this trend, and the second one is actually good. When landing an attack, he will buff his intelligence and will by 20%. So he's one of those debuffers that will protect himself from being debuffed or inflicted with ailments. And then he has fired up 6 to increase his damage by 30%. His main gameplay is using Darkness Bolt, a 5 VP single target attack with Shadow and Lightning that can debuff Will by 15% while also buffing his own intelligence. The damage here is actually good, B and 26, and Lightning is still pretty hard in the game, so he can do damage while debuffing the enemy to do more damage on the next turn, and also buff his intelligence to increase the chances of debuffing and his own damage potential. He's a pretty focused character with just this skill. He will also allow other debuffers to debuff, because he's debuffing the enemy Will. But, you know, some bosses will have the 5 weaknesses and will remove all the buffs that you applied, but he at least will keep the intelligence buff he applied on himself, and he will then buff intelligence twice. Here he buffs by 25 and here by 20. His damage output is actually pretty good. So Darkness Bolt is 5, he gets 4 BP per turn, he can use this many times in a row, and the damage scaling is good. He also has his attack called Soul Freeze Plus that has 9 BP cost and can inflict paralyze in multiple targets. After he debuffs Will, he can also change his attack to apply an ailment, but I do believe that it's better to use someone else. Someone else will just apply the ailment. But because he also buffs his own intelligence, you can still use him depending on the scenarios. He has access to many ailments, like he has Poisonous Blow to inflict poison, Shadow Chains that has the highest chance to inflict paralyze, and it's something that I use with him. And so if you place him in a position that increases his own intelligence by 15%, you can use Darkness Bolt 2 times, and then on turn 3, or even sometimes on turn 2, you can already paralyze. Soul Freeze is a full AoE paralyze, and then Energy Bolt is just a weak attack with Shadow and Lightning. You should ignore this attack most of the time. He is made for Will debuffing, but we did get someone that is better, and that one is Red Mage, that also does good damage. He just doesn't have the Lightning effect, but he can debuff Will between 20 and 25% every turn, so he actually works pretty fine. But if you skip it Red Mage, then this guy here works well. Another character can also debuff Will pretty well is Rastaban. If you got him, you don't need to get Rouge. Well, you can still use multiple Will debuffers, but you have reduced GL value when chasing multiple. He is good because he actually works well for AoE, while Rouge is focused on a single target. Well, all in all, Rouge stays as a standard SS grade for now because he scales well in long fights, can even do some good damage, act like a debuffer and main or secondary damage dealer, hence why he still is useful. And the last character is Arsenal. He's a gunner that actually works for farming, but not as much for bossing, although you can use him for one type of setup. We have high endurance and dexterity, and good enough agility, but suffers in all remaining status. We have the Toxinator. This cleanses him from all ailments and recovers 1 BP on the end of a turn, so 4 BP per turn. Also gets 40% damage passives and starts with 12 BP. Well, this character here has multiple setups, mostly for farming. He can open with Force Blaster, 4-hit attack with the power that actually deals plenty of damage if you use the Remembrance Gun. And he will recover HP with each hit, reaching 600 HP on average. So nice, but I don't think that he's good for bossing anyway. And then he has Smasher. This is a full AoE attack that hits for Blunt and Stun, and he can use this on turn 1 and then again on turn 3. It's strong for farming. You can compare this to Talon, but Talon deals more damage and can use on turn 1 and 2, while Arsenal uses on turn 1 and 3. So Arsenal is more made for, you know, farming on story mode, and he does not have fast. He needs to be used on the front line. And then Mega Smasher is a delay attack, so that you can program a third AoE attack called Star Catastrophe. It has S power, but it's pretty close to double S, has blunt and some damage, and will hit for a lot if you have the Remembrance Gun again. So you can prepare him for full AoE damage on turn 2 instead of turn 1. you use Star Catastrophe, and he will not interfere because he has delay, but someone else will have to clear the first wave. But we do have many of options, like even Talon, like I said. And then, this is his main gameplay, besides Heavy Nullifier, an ABP attack that will buff break all enemies. Well, this seems interesting, removing all buffs from enemies, but I still don't remember a fight where this was needed. I think there was maybe one stage in Pandemonium Tower where we had like 8 enemies and some of them could buff themselves, but you could still kill them with counter strategy instead of going for Heavy Nullifier with buff break. So we have many other characters that can buff break single targets. That makes more sense, and if you are bringing Arsenal just for this, well, you are taking one slot in our party. Depending on the situations, may be useful, but most of the time it's just not. So Arsenal is the character that's more limited here, because he just doesn't work well for bossing, in my opinion. Arsenal is actually made for farming most of the time. He's very strong, but bossing capabilities are pretty limited in my opinion. Arsenal plays as a farmer is just standard SS. He's probably going to be demoted to SS- in a short future. Now back to the banner image. Is this banner worth summoning for? I have to say that it depends. If you don't have a single unit from this banner, then it receives Premium Silver Award, getting extremely close to gold, because, well, Therese and Lyza are still on their primes, while Robingirl, Rouge, and Arsenal are not anymore. So, if you are after Therese and Lyza, you still have some value here, because they may help you, while the other ones are still useful, but they are easier to skip. So, if you already have those two, I suggest you to skip. If you are after the other ones, then it's more on you. If you have enough gens and you like the characters, then that is okay. For new players that don't have any of them, I do suggest to pull a list to get something here. You don't need to go for a PD. But for veterans, I have to say that you can think about by waiting at least 1 week to see what's coming. We may have minstrel song banners, and there is also bow users there. And if you already have at least one of Lyza or one of Therese, then the value decreases a lot for you guys. So think about that. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe if you haven't. And if you want to support the channel, there are links in the description. I hope to see you soon in the next one. Bye.